Eion Colfer exploded onto the literary stage a little under a decade ago with the first Artemis Fowl novel. A multi-million selling author, he's now translated into 24 languages, and his most recent book is part 6 of 3 of Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Eion Colfer, welcome to the London Book Fair podcast. Now, 2 fictional kids changed the face of publishing. One was Harry Potter, the other was Artemis Fowl. How does it feel to have made a difference to so many young lives?
I do try and separate myself from that side of it, because I don't want it to affect the stories I'm trying to tell. I loved the personal touch when you sit down with a group of kids and you talk about things and, you know, I hate this guy, I love this guy. But this thing about you've done this or you've achieved that, I think once you start buying into that kind of stuff, it infiltrates what you're trying to do. So I really think there's another Eion Colfer somewhere, and he does all that.
You grew up in a creative household. Do you think you were sort of destined to be a writer?
From a very early age, I mean, very early, we were writing and drawing, and there was always art materials in our house. And I remember writing my first story on a blackboard we had in the house. And I remember distinctly it was about Rolf Harris. And I drew a picture of Rolf Harris, and beside him then I wrote this story about him.
What were your favourite books that just kind of you read over and over?
I read everything I could get, but I really liked the old swashbucklers. So stuff like Robin Hood or Ivanhoe or The Three Musketeers, anything like that in that genre. I really loved that stuff because it was a different time, I think, and it was very exotic to me, and there was this nobility about the books which I really loved, and I think that's why in later life I went back into a book called Airman, which was very much in the ledger domain arena, and I still love that. I think I've often thought of just writing books like that because I love them. I love them so much, but unfortunately they don't lend themselves to smart alecky, and that's a large part of what I do, is being a smart aleck. And I've often tried to start a book, a horror story or something, and say, no jokes this time, just straight, you know, genre. And by the end of page 2, I always, you know, give in and I put in a few jokes. So it's like my Achilles heel in a way. Was teaching something you aspired to from childhood, or did you fall into it as so many people do? Not initially, but when I went to my own father's class, and my dad was quite, I would say, ahead of his time as regards teaching, because he did not believe in beating kids, which might seem unbelievable now, but when we started in school... In those days you did? Oh, absolutely. And you were encouraged to, you know, parents would come in and say, you know, if he's getting out of hand now, give him a good smack across the head and that'll sort him out. And I remember my dad saying to us, do you want me to hit you? And we all said, no. He said, well, I don't want to hit you. Surely there must be some arrangement we can come to where I don't have to hit you. But you did most of your teaching, it seems, in Saudi, which must have been a challenge, Tunisia and Italy. I mean, two Arab, but quite different Arab cultures. Yeah, I mean, they're the opposite ends of the Arab spectrum, I suppose. Yes. In that Saudi is quite strict, and then Tunisia is quite relaxed, and we just had such a fantastic time in Tunisia. We stayed there for a couple of years. Benny and Omar presumably came out of your Arab... Benny and Omar came from Tunisia very directly. I mean, all the things in Benny and Omar almost happened, but to different people. And unexpectedly, or did you know you'd write? Well, I had been writing before that. In my 20s, I was a playwright. Right. Well, you know, that sounds very grand. But I wrote plays for myself and my buddies. How easy was it to find a publisher in Ireland? When I was 19, I wrote a book, which, you know, when you look at it now, you realise was very similar to Tarzan, except it was wolves instead of apes, you know, so luckily that was never published. But when I was in Tunisia then, I wrote Benny, and I came back, and the first publisher I sent it to took it. And so I had 6 books with them. And then I wrote Artemis Fowl, and... so you were quite a success in Ireland? Yeah, it was going pretty well. In Ireland, I had the Christmas #1 for a few years, and but it was my wife, and I was kind of happy to toddle along. I didn't want to upset anybody. I had a publisher. I thought if I went looking for an agent, I might lose my publisher. Yeah. And my wife read Artemis, the first draft of it, and she said, okay, now it's time to get an agent. And because we had seen a TV show where I think John Connolly or somebody was on it, and they said, oh, you need to get an agent because you won't make any money unless you have an agent. And I really wanted to be a writer full-time, and you can't make enough money in Ireland to do that. Did it feel almost like a betrayal when you were taken up by an English publisher, a British publisher? You do. I mean, I felt, you know, the guys have given me my start, but I had to think of, at that point in my life, we had a young child. My wife had started a new business and basically had no salary. And I was going insane, you know, because I would come home at 3 o'clock, pick up the baby, feed the baby, you know, try to correct my copies, put the baby to bed, and try and do 2 hours writing. And I knew I couldn't go on like that, and something had to go, and it would be the writing. The
books have been described as William Gibson meets The Hobbit. I know your brothers have something to do with this, but where did Artemis come from? Die Hard with Fairies, I think you described it.
It was 2 stories. There was the kind of the little anti-hero Bond villain boy. That was one story. And then the other story was about this, these high-tech leprechauns. And initially it was going to be a picture book. I had just done 3 picture books. And so I started this story called The Lost Leprechaun, about this little guy who bumps his head and forgets he's a leprechaun, and he goes to live with humans. And all sorts of weird things begin to happen. You know, all the kids in the class start floating in the air and nobody knows what's happening. And eventually, in the nick of time, this fairy SWAT team come in and rescue him and bring him back to the fairies, and they give him his memory back. But what stuck with me from that story was the fairy SWAT team. I thought, wow, there's a lot of potential there, you know, outside this little story. And then I put them together with this 12-year-old Bond villain who my brother Donald had inspired in his confirmation suit. And I thought, well, he could be the guy who wants the crock of gold. It's the old story, and I put those 2 together and came up with Artemis Fowl.
Do you enjoy writing, or do you enjoy having written?
I like writing. I don't know, I mean, I just like being on my own with my music on and having, you know, a nice chair. It's a really nice job because I'm not under any immediate pressure.
No pressure except when you're writing Hitchhiker?
Hitchhiker was pressure. In a way, I was too removed from the pressure.
Did you say yes immediately?
No, I said no.
You thought it was a terrible responsibility?
No, I just thought it was a terrible idea.
Right.
I thought, you know, nobody should do this.
What changed your mind?
Well, I think what changed my mind was that I want to know who wanted it done, and why did they want it done, and what was the why now. It came back that, you know, Jane and Polly would like it done and they'd like me to do it, and that was hard to turn down. And also it is like being, I felt I would really regret it if I didn't do it, but I mean, I'm still not sure I should have done it. It's not, I don't now think, well, there's a decision that I don't regret. But
it was well received.
It was well received, you know, people liked it, but it's just, it's difficult to know. You know, it became kind of like an exercise to do it. It's strange to follow someone else's work.
Yes.
It's, you know, in a little way, it's not as pure. I wouldn't do it again, but I had the best time doing the actual writing. But as soon as I came out of my head into the real world, I really felt the pressure. But I learned a lot then. I learned that all this internet stuff, it doesn't really mean anything, because there's no, it's very easy to tap off, I hate this guy, blah, blah, blah. There's no responsibility. You don't even have to lick the stamp, go down to the post box. You just, yeah, whatever. And most of those people don't even mean it. You know, they're just saying, you know, it's just a flip off the cover mark. They don't care. They don't remember it 10 minutes later.
Now, you're author of the day at the London Book Fair. Have you done that kind of thing before, presumably, in any book fair?
No, I've never been author of the day, so I'm very excited about that, and I'm expecting, you know, to wear a purple robe and have leaves scattered. No, I know I probably have to do a few events, and my events tend to be very loosely organised. I tend to go on and talk and not read much, and people say to me, you know, we did come 200 miles, would you please read something? But I'm always of the feeling that I'd rather get to know people, and I want people to get to know me and then understand, and then go away and read the book. Because a lot of me feels books aren't meant to be read out loud, that they're a very private thing, and you take it away yourself and devour it, and sometimes when you read it out loud, it loses something.
Eion Colfer, thank you very much.
Thank you.